Hello and welcome back to An Old Man Watches, and today I'm going to be talking about Ferris Bueller's Day Off from 1986. And in a Chicago suburb, 2 months before graduation, high school senior Ferris Bueller tells his parents he is too ill to go to school. His parents allow him to stay home, much to the disgust of his sister Jeannie, who is sure Ferris is faking. And she's right. For no less than the ninth time this semester, Ferris is playing truant. He convinces his hypochondriac best friend Cameron to join him in the day off, and also in borrowing Cameron's dad's most prized possession, a 1961 Ferrari Spider. Or, if you're me, a very flash-looking red car. Ferris justifies this latter indulgence as a necessary part of his plan to get his girlfriend Sloane excused from school. The trio then head into the middle of Chicago for a day of escapades and adventures, including conning their way into a snooty restaurant, attending a Cubs game, and also attending the Von Steuben Day Parade, which is a particularly impressive achievement given that parade is held on a Saturday, not a school day, but that's the movies for you. This fun-filled excursion may eventually have its downside, though. Both Ferris' sister Jeannie and his school principal are wise to his truant ways, and each intends to expose him for the fraud he is. Can even Ferris's absurd levels of charm and quick wit save him this time, or has he taken off one day too many? So Ferris Bueller's Day Off was written and directed by John Hughes, who had already enjoyed critical and commercial success with films such as The Breakfast Club and Weird Science. This movie would continue that trend. It received a positive response from critics and would ultimately return 14 times its budget at the US box office. That was just enough to sneak it into the top 10 domestic ticket sales of the year, and doubtless made its investors very happy indeed. The movie also provided breakthrough roles for Mia Sara and Alan Ruck, and it returned star Matthew Broderick to box office success after the financial failure of 1985's Ladyhawke, a film that I'll probably never review because I mostly recall it being massively overrated by a generation of fantasy nerds like myself who were starved of such fare on TV and the big screen. Unlike some films that were successful on release and then fade away, Ferris Bueller has continued to hold a strong reputation, no doubt helped by how quotable it would prove. It regularly turns up in best-of lists, and in 2014 it was added to United States National Film Registry for being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. But the real question for this video, of course, is do I think you'll like it, and if not, why not? Well, the last part is probably the easiest to answer. The most probable reason to dislike this movie is Ferris himself. Certainly those critics who gave negative reviews of the film when it came out tended to do so because they objected to Ferris himself. And I get it. Ferris is not an intrinsically sympathetic character. He's certainly got no hardship in his life to overcome. He's smart, handsome, popular, and has wealthy parents who not only dote on him but appear completely oblivious to his capacity for duplicity. He also has an improbably loyal and biddable best friend and a gorgeous girlfriend. Ferris's smugness about his good fortune and willingness to exploit it for his own benefit may leave some viewers wanting to see him get his comeuppance by the end of the film, especially after an early scene in which he complains about not having a car of his own. It's definitely a case of him being rather immature, a clear sign of Ferris's blindness to his own privilege. But I think that's entirely how the scene is intended to be viewed. Ferris is a rather self-entitled individual, a wealthy white male with all that entails, and he's got plenty of flaws that his privilege allows him to indulge. But in his defence, Ferris is not deliberately a bad person, and he has his generous impulses. He genuinely cares for Sloane and Cameron, for instance, and he does step up for others when it's required. Admittedly, in many cases, the need to step up may have been Ferris's own fault to begin with, but at least he owns that. His ability to put others before himself, however little we get to see of it in the film, is what sets him apart from his primary antagonist in the movie. That antagonist is Principal Rooney, also a white male, and in this case one with even more institutional power. Rooney's thirst to expose Ferris leads him on a quixotic quest to bring down the teenage troublemaker. In doing so, the principal abandons his responsibilities to his colleagues and students and never shows any moment of awareness of this. His own needs are much more important to him than anything else, and he is in this regard a neatly warped mirror of Ferris himself. And one of the film's strengths is its ability to incorporate multiple such warped mirrors between characters. There's another between Jeannie and the principal, for instance. Both want Ferris finally to get caught out, Both find their efforts causing them far more harm than to their target, but of the two of them, only Jeannie realises that her obsession with what Ferris is doing is not helping her, but hurting her, and learns to focus on herself instead. There's also, I think, an inversely warped mirror between Ferris and Cameron. Here they start as virtual opposites. The film shows Ferris as a leader and schemer, very much the active partner to Cameron's passive follower type, with Ferris constantly pushing Cameron to do things he otherwise wouldn't. Over the course of the movie, though, Cameron begins to show strength and independence of his own, growing to be a little bit more like Ferris, or at least the better parts of Ferris. Overall, there's some cleverly done stuff underneath the oddball premise and unlikely comic hijinks. Now, also, like Hughes' earlier film, The Breakfast Club, this movie has a cracking soundtrack that is masterfully blended into the film's narrative. To this day, I can't hear Yellow's "Oh Yeah" without thinking of this film, nor can I hear this film without anticipating Yellow's "Oh Yeah." You have to say it that way, it's just the rules. And yet, despite the significant commercial success of the Breakfast Club soundtrack and the potency of Ferris Bueller's musical elements, director John Hughes refused to release a soundtrack album for this film, resisting pressure from record label A&M to do so. Hughes felt the combination of songs was too oddball to work, combining as it did an eclectic mix of 60s hits, then modern new wave songs, electronic dance tracks, ska, funk and punk rock. He summed up his stance very simply: I just didn't think anyone would like it. It was only in 2016, 7 years after Hughes' death, that a soundtrack album was released, and even then it was limited to only 5,000 copies. Of course, nowadays, thanks to the rise of streaming services, you can recreate the album yourself as a playlist on your preferred musical platform. In some ways, we really do live in the future. Ferris Bueller's Day Off is a fun, lightweight comedy romp with some smart writing underpinning its far-fetched antics and a likeable performance from Matthew Broderick to keep the audience on Ferris's side. It left me with a smile on my face, and hopefully it will do the same for you too. Next time, some cheap movies are knockoffs of a specific big-budget film, and others just steal from a number of better-known sources. Let's find out which of these options 1996 release Alien Species will choose. But that's next time. Until then, thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoyed it.